Thank you. Thank you. Hello and welcome to episode 46 of the Criminologist podcast. Happy to have you all with us today. As you may or may not know, this podcast is a production of the Paragon Group, more specifically the Criminologist Media Group division. The Criminologist Media Group brings you this podcast as well as the Criminologist YouTube channel. On both those platforms, we really try to get at the way the media perceives justice involves individuals, portrays justice involved individuals, and really try to take a critical look at that process. In that spirit, we are back this week with part 2 of our watch party of the movie The Cured. The Cured is an Irish film. It was released in 2017. I watched the film initially due to its apparent zombie storylines, but as we learned 2 episodes ago during part 1 of our watch party, it is so much more than that. The description of this film on IMDb, the Internet Movie Database, reads, "A disease that turns people into zombies has been cured. The once infected zombies are discriminated against by society and their own families, which causes social issues to arise. This leads to militant government interference." This film is available to watch on Hulu for free, or you can rent it on Amazon for about $4 US. If you have not yet seen the film, ideally, I would suggest that you pause this podcast, go back, check it out, and then track along with us as you listen and watch on YouTube on your own television or device. And join me for my reactions as we're taking on the second chunk of this film in this episode and podcast. So if you truly want to get all my reactions, maybe jump on over and have a watch on YouTube as well. Or listen on the podcast, of course, where you're always welcome. To recap what has happened in the film thus far, we again watched the first 1/3 of the movie 2 podcast episodes ago. Our protagonist, Senan, has survived a zombie plague in Ireland and has been cured. So the backstory is that after years of ravaging the country, the government came up with a cure for this zombie affliction. That's the good news. The bad news is about 25% of those afflicted remain resistant, as they say, to the cure. The other interesting plot twist is that scientists soon discovered that those who were cured, so to speak, remembered everything they did during their zombie rampages, all the killing and mayhem. So that is a real struggle, again, when they're facing discrimination and prejudice, trying to go through the reentry process, so to speak. So here's how we will proceed. I'm going to watch the film along with you, and I'm going to watch it here on my iPad. You're going to be able to hear a little bit of what's going on in the film. I'll give you at home who are watching on YouTube little screenshots of the film to keep you up to speed. We're going to start where we last left off, which was just after the part when our protagonist, Senan, witnessed and breaks up the sexual assault by 2 soldiers, guards, at the recovery laboratory, so to speak. And then as we watch the next 30 minutes or so of this film, again, I'm going to try to keep you all up to speed with the story, but the value added here, of course, will be my observations to how this film is really not at all about zombie reintegration. Rather, the zombies in this movie are used as a clever bit of symbolism to sort of represent or show the struggles of justice-involved individuals being released from custody, from jail, from prison, and the struggles that they endure despite society's best efforts, to allow them to integrate. The struggles they endure, rather, with bias and stereotypes and all that kind of stuff, which these themes should sound familiar if you're a criminal justice practitioner and or those of you with lived experiences who can relate to that. Okay, so get your fingers on your remote control and get ready to hit play. And again, we're about at the 31-minute mark as we continue our watch party here on The Criminologist with the film The Cured. And we're going to resume here in about 3, 2, 1, and play. So like I said, there's protests going on in the streets here. There's a lot of tension and strife because people are really, again, resistant to allowing folks who have been quote-unquote cured back into society. A lot of mistrust going on here. The doctor here, Dr. Lyons, is now appearing on a talk show. She is still desperately trying to figure out how to make the cure work for those 25% resisted. The government at this point has just made the decision to humanely eliminate the resistant 25%. So they're basically throwing in the towel here on these folks. Again, if you want to draw criminal justice analogies here, this is almost like you're looking at folks serving life sentences or on death row, and they're just sort of debating, why are we even warehousing these folks who have no chance of rehabilitation here? Again, a clever plot device that the film is using here. Now we're seeing a scene with our protagonist, Senan, and his friend, Connor, who was formerly an attorney running for office, and now he has had to take on a job as a janitor, again, because of the discrimination in the job market that he faces. His father refused to take him back into the home because he blames him for he did kill his mother when he was a zombie. So they have sort of got this underground movement going on to protest the conditions that the so-called cured are having to endure. So you see Senan reluctantly going with this crowd with Molotov cocktails, and they're just, again, trying to protest the government's decision to, again, quote-unquote, humanely eliminate the 25% resistant to the cure. At one point you hear Connor say to his friend Senan, they won't stop with the resistant. They want us all dead. We have to stop them. And so again, now you see them out with Molotov cocktails, sort of making a statement, if you will. And you see Senan here just threw a Molotov cocktail through someone's house. Flames are erupting. Again, I think this is really just sort of symbolic. They're trying to show, again, every reaction has an equal and opposite reaction. So when you put up all these barriers at reintegration, there's going to be this natural pushback, if you will. Now, Senan's sister, Abby, who is a reporter in the film who has taken him in, is now reporting on this story. She's hearing that there have been 45 bombings in the city. The next day, we see Senan going back to work. He secured employment in the laboratory, actually, where they were desperately trying to figure out how to cure the 25% resistant. And he just heard on the news that there were some casualties with the firebombing last night, which he was not told at the time. Again, lots of mayhem and strife. So our reporter here, Abby, who is played by Elliot Page, she's got her camera out, her camcorder, and she's trying to track down, get behind the story of this sort of militia group, if you will, of the cured. Meantime, Senan is really still struggling with trauma here. He keeps having flashbacks to what he did, the violence as a zombie. And now you see him again in his zombie state during a flashback. He's got somebody cornered, begging for their life. We're not sure at this point in the film who this is. And there is Connor right behind him. And again, in the flashback scenes, we piece together that Senan and Connor actually hunted together as zombies. And now we know post-flashback that they've reconnected after being cured. So we don't see it on film, but you hear Senin taking down, killing that individual in the house. And again, he's just lots of trauma here going on back in present day. And now we fast forward to, again, a meeting sort of the I'm not sure what to refer to the cured as here. I don't want to throw labels around, but again, they're sort of organizing, sort of like this sort of ex-prisoners' rights group, kind of thing, to protest the conditions that they're having to or endure. And so now we learn here, really through photographs and whatnot, that Dr. Lyons has a connection with the individual that she's trying to save here. A personal connection, and she just admits, we found the cure together. And how later they realized that the cured can remember everything they did while spreading mayhem and violence and whatnot. So she really is a true believer here, so to speak. And again, she's saying, you're not responsible for what you did. You were just sick. But as she says now, we cured you. So again, there's a lot of parables here with forgiveness and retribution versus all of that stuff that goes into the struggle between, like I said, reintegration and balancing a just society. So now she's asking him, Abby, who's the sister-in-law of Senin here, are you part of the Cured Alliance? That's what that group is known as, the Cured Alliance. Which, of course, he denies. Ooh, excuse that sound in the podcast. Flipping my legal pad here for more notes. And now they're talking about her late husband, Luke. And she says how there was just so much chaos after the outbreak and society sort of breaking down here, as you know. And I don't want to spoil too much of the film for you as you're watching along, but you are probably connecting some dots here. She says how when rumors started spreading that they had come up with a vaccine, that they had come up with a cure, she convinced herself that her missing husband, Luke, was actually a zombie and was just waiting for a cure, which again, if you weigh all the alternatives here, in her mind, that was better than him being dead. Well, if he's a zombie, he can be cured. Ba-ba-ba-bum. And then, the realization that her husband was gone. Her husband, Luke, who was, again, Senin's brother. So when he went through the cured process and they had to stay in these sort of reintegration camps for months, his release plan, if you will, or his parole plan, if we're sticking with that analogy, was to his sister-in-law's house, back to his former brother's house. So now they just decided to get out of the city. I told myself that I was going to do a little bit of research and find out the shooting locations of this movie, because this is just beautiful countryside here. So maybe in the post viewing party, when I'm wrapping up the podcast and I have a quick chance, I'll do that as a shout out to all of my listeners and viewers in the UK. So in the film, it's a quieter moment. It's him, his sister-in-law, and he's got his nephew up on his shoulders. And he talks about how he and Luke, the young boy's dad, used to go there when they were kids. again, the film is really showcasing the struggles of reintegration for folks coming out of custody. All right, now they're sitting down for a nice family dinner, and there's going to be a knock on the door here. Little boy's asking Senan about the scars on his arms, which he doesn't answer how that happened. Oh, and look who's here. It's our friend Connor, who is leader of the Cured Alliance. Sits down at the table with them. Says hello to the little boy. Introduces himself. Lots of apprehension on Senan's face here. Doesn't think Connor can be trusted. And as we're about to hear and see, he cannot. Abby doesn't trust or like Connor at all. Again, I believe she suspects the reporter in her that he's connected to the Cured Alliance and some of that violence taking place now in the city with the Molotov cocktail bombings. He's saying how there's a lot of anger in that community of the cured, particularly with the elimination. Again, they're just going to euthanize, if you will. Not really euthanize, but eliminate. They're going to kill the 25% resistant that the virus, that the vaccine rather is not working on. So he's saying there's a lot of cured that are upset about that. And now she asks Abby, "Can I ask you something? Do you think we deserve forgiveness?" She replies, yes, that she does. And he asks, even if it were the man who killed your husband? You can see Senan clenching his fist here. And Abby says, hey, they weren't in control. And we can see Senan getting really, really angry and nervous here. And then, thankfully, Abby stands up and leaves the room. But what's he alluding to there, we wonder? So Senan saying, you told me they were empty targets. When he was throwing around Molotov cocktails, he didn't realize that people could get hurt. And, Connor's reply is, hey, there's always casualties, right? Senan's trying to guilt him out here, asking, do you think you can just shut the door and pretend it's okay? Senan's really conflicted here. And then he says to him, she'll find out eventually. What could he mean? She'll find out eventually. Some of you have probably already figured this out. And if you haven't, now we're back to another flashback scene with Senan and Connor as zombies. But again, I know my watchers and listeners are smart. You've probably figured out the connection here. All right, the next day. Little boy's late for school. Mom's telling him to brush his teeth and hurry up. And Senan says, hey, I can take him to school. She says, well, you don't know where it is. To which the boy replies, well, I can show him. And she agrees, and off to school the two of them go. So again, we get the picture here that Senan is really doing all he can to acclimate and reintegrate into society. But again, it's conflicting forces that are keeping him from doing just that. Okay, now back at the house. Again, Abby running late for work, and the individual, last episode I just called him the PO, but he's this soldier who is sort of the case officer for Senan, who's being monitored as one of the cured. Abby doesn't like this person at all, and he's telling her it's natural for there to be problems at first. She's saying, no, no problems. And he's saying, well, they can be aggressive, sort of throwing stereotypes around here. And again, she has seen how this officer treats some of them, up to and including physical abuse, so she throws that right back in his face. You know, um, they bring up Connor, and she says, well, they're friends from quarantine. And then the officer replies to her, oh, is that what they told you? And again, he is saying, they're mindless monsters here. He's saying that back when they were zombies, they would hunt together and they would decide who to kill and who to infect. In fact, to grow the pack, if you will. She said, the officer tells her, rather, they're connected in a way that we will never understand. And he leaves behind on her kitchen table a government file that says confidential plastered all over it. And when Abby opens it up, she sees some photographs here of her brother-in-law. Looks like back when he was going through the process of being cured. But then there's also some surveillance videos of him and Connor as zombies. So now she learns for the first time they did not simply meet in quarantine. They used to hunt together as zombies. So if nothing else, there's been some dishonesty around that relationship. So now she wants to do a little investigative journalism here, and she's going to creep into a building here where, as we're about to see and hear, there's a meeting going on of the Cured Alliance. Again, that's that sort of underground group of the Cured, which again were the zombies who the vaccine worked on. Shots of long hallways. We see posters on the wall about, are you cured, depressed, anxiety. So at least on one level, it looks like there's an acknowledgement of the trauma that these folks are going through. But again, as we saw previously from the officer, there's not a lot of empathy here. So she's filming as she goes here, and she sees a group of them all sort of like standing in a room with their eyes shut, breathing heavy, almost chanting, like they're communicating mentally. Again, like there's this hive mentality still going on even after they've been cured, that they've got this connection. And now Connor, who again is sort of the leader of the Cured Alliance, is saying we've got to do more than simply break windows like a bunch of petulant teenagers. He really wants to up the violence game here. And now Abby is discovered by one of the cured. Connor sees this going down and says, hey, Abby. So she's been cornered here by him and about to be questioned as to, hey, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? And she said, I just wanted to see for myself. And he half jokes, well, I thought you came here to see me. Again, really icy relationship between these two. She really doesn't like him. And he's saying, hey, look, all I've tried to do is help people. Look at how they treat us. What choice do they have? Great line there. He just said, there's the thing. We're not the only killers. We're just the ones being reminded of it. So think about all we talk about on the show as far as labeling and identity. And if you listened last week when I interviewed Shad Maruna, we had a great conversation about how that labeling feeds identity and the use of that term offender even. So again, this movie is really showing, hey, look, if you just keep throwing our past in our faces here, you're not allowing us to sort of shake off that yoke and to change. You're always going to view us and judge us and treat us based on our past. And again, the theme here is, as we've said on the show a lot, we're more than our past, basically, is what he's saying. And society just won't see past that. So now there's a little bit of a cat and mouse foot chase here, and Abby's being chased, and she escapes the building through a fire escape and gets out safely. So end of that scene. And now we're back to the laboratory with Dr. Lyons, who again is just desperately trying to find the cure for her loved one here, her former partner who worked on the cure with her, but somewhere along the way got infected herself. They've got her lab set up in a gymnasium with a drained swimming pool. So we see a scene here of a gurney at the bottom of the pool, which again was sort of her makeshift hospital lab setting. And she looks like she's hopeful, like, oh, this, you're serene. You know, did it work? Did the cure work? She's just sitting on the gurney on the bed, pretty peaceful here and serene. But what do you think? Is she just playing possum? She is. So now the doctor's being attacked. She was hopefully sort of duped into it. Thankfully, the individual's ankle is still strapped to the gurney, and soldiers hear the ruckus, come running into the room and restrain her. But again, she kind of got her hopes up there that that the person had changed. But again, she still is in the zombie mania, if you will. All right, now we're back home with Senan and his nephew, and they're having some good uncle-nephew bonding time. Senan's letting him draw makeup on his face. He's got kind of a clown makeup on, a cat makeup on. And Abby's in the other room in her office reviewing the videotape she shot of Connor and the Cured Alliance, where, again, he's saying, we have to do more than act like a bunch of petulant teenagers throwing bottles. More flashback scenes. Again, Senan just keeps flashing back to the scenes of him and Connor when they were communicating in that zombie hive mentality and hunting together. All right, what is this scene here? We see Connor standing in the outside of the building, and oh, look who pulls up. Dr. Lyons. Now, what could these two possibly have in common, we wonder? Back home, Abby is looking at some graffiti on their window. Someone wrote the word scum. Again, there's lots of hostility, even for those who take in the cured, because again, there's just this notion that they shouldn't be forgiven, that they're still the same person. So again, sticking with our analogy, it's almost as if the folks who open up their homes and take in former friends, family, and loved ones post-incarceration should be attacked themselves. Or in this case, their house vandalized. So she's in the backyard, kind of freaked out that there's a home intruder. And Senan comes out and says, hey, what are you doing out here? And she replies, oh, I'm sorry, I'm just a little on edge. So let's go back into the house. Okay. Kind of talking about when his nephew was born, how his brother Luke was petrified. Here, again, we're waiting for her to connect the dots and you, the listener, to connect the dots on what went down there. Sorry for the dead air. kind of a slow scene here of these two just, again, sort of reminiscing about the pre-zombie days when Luke was still alive. All right, now we have a home invasion, and Senan is attacked by a baseball bat by a masked bandit who proceeds to, again, add more graffiti to the home. Next day, the police arrive. They're asking him, did this person have any distinctive features? That type of thing. We can see more graffiti that they sprayed on the inside of the house. We see the word scum on the wall. And the officer says, this sort of thing is not uncommon in homes with, and he kind of hesitates to pick his words, and Senan says, you can say cured. The officer was really kind of struggling with how to refer to that person. All right, now we're back out. Connor's at his day job as a maintenance man, janitor. Senan approaches him. Said, you're right, I can't keep them safe. Referring to his family, again, after last night's home invasion. And Connor says, we need something that will make them listen. And so what might that be, we wonder? What might that be? Now, Abby's irritated because it appears somebody stole the videotape that she took back when she was filming undercover, if you will, the Cured Alliance. And she's making a phone call to someone saying, it's Connor. I think he's planning something. So maybe she was calling the officer. We're not sure. All right, now back at the Cured Alliance, Senan rolls in and he sees his boss, basically, Dr. Lyons, sitting at the table with Connor and the rest of the Cured Alliance, wondering, what are you doing here? Interesting turn of events. Connor says, if we have one of the resistant, they have to take us seriously. So the doctor's afraid that they're going to exterminate and put down her companion, her friend, she's been desperately trying to cure with the virus. She doesn't want this to happen, so she's thinking she's going to kidnap this person, turn them over to the Cured Alliance. And Santa can't believe this is going down. And Connor saying, they're the same as us. We can't stand by and do nothing. He's referring to the 25% resistant who still manifest their zombie behaviors. Uh-oh. Cops come busting in. Soldiers, stormtroopers. They're raiding the place here now. Connor's making a break for it. He's pleading with Senan. Senan, come on. And Senan basically just gives up and allows himself to be arrested here. Okay. One last scene here, because I've got to get to the point where we can do the reveal on, again, what many of you, I suspect, have already connected the dots on here of what went down during the zombie mayhem. So Abby's in the park playing with her son. Connor comes up to approach her. Again, she's not too happy to see him, but curious nonetheless. She says, I told you to stay away from us. And he's saying he just wanted to make sure she was okay because Senan told him about the break-in at the house. So, again, not a lot of love lost between these two. He's saying, you're just like everybody else. And Connor's saying, we're not the same people anymore. And she sarcastically says, all this because Daddy wouldn't give you a job. We previously talked about how Connor's father didn't give him a job. So Connor's showing a scar in his neck and says, you know, I met your husband once. Bless him. He tried his best. She thinks that's BS, that he's lying to her, but Connor replies, you should ask Senan. It's all very Cain and Abel. Dun, dun, dun. Alrighty, let's cut it there as far as viewing the film goes. So again, lots of good stuff here with analogies between the struggles of reintegration and the struggles with our zombies after they have been cured. We have got about 30 minutes left in the film. We'll pick that up in a couple of more weeks here.